Then Al Gore's going to lay his hands on you and cure you.
Absolutely.
1-877.
As long as you pay enough.
We call it a love offering. If you love those polar bears, you're going to make your love offering to the Reverend Gore. He's not just the Reverend. He's the Pope. He's the prophet.
Look, he's done well by it.
Yes, he has. From $2 million to $100 million in 8 years.
More. I mean, have you ever seen his contract for this talk where he presents his PowerPoint?
No.
It's at least $100,000 a presentation. And then there are rules. He has to fly first class to use enough carbon. And no question.
No question.
No question.
It seems to be a recurring theme.
Yes, yes.
Larry, you're next with Howie Carr and Dr. Richard Lindzen, an atmospheric scientist from MIT. Go ahead, Larry.
So, Dr. Lindzen, I'm also Abu Cupcake around here. My father is an MIT grad, and he funded the Carl Gustav Rossby Award. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes.
And my question to you is a fairly serious question. It doesn't surprise me that Time and New York Times are in this little echo chamber, because they have an agenda, and this suits their agenda. My question is really, when you get students, and this was on my dad's mind when he funded this prize, which is, I would guess, the most prestigious award in graduate meteorology in the world. When you get, are they already convinced of this? They already entered the echo chamber, and at what point does the interest in science cease and the interest in being an acolyte at the Church of Gore begin?
Yeah, you've asked a complicated question. My impression of the students is they're actually pretty open-minded and skeptical about the issue, but they have the issue of survival, and I think they're well aware. I mean, you have things like Science Magazine and Nature who have editorialized and specifically, explicitly said that they will not publish articles that question this. And so a lot of universities are saying they count papers in Science and Nature more than they do in the professional society journals.
So the students have the same fears about being ostracized that the Nobel laureates have.
Oh, well, they have their careers at issue.
That's scary. That the Nobel laureates are scared as the students.
At least, I think the students know that the issue is questionable. Mm-hmm. But they also understand that there are other things at stake.
This prize that my dad funded took short money when he did it. It wasn't, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in finding out if it would be possible to put together a fund, to put together a prize looking at the real sciencer. Because I think that having a prize in graduate school is a force multiplier. It doesn't take that much money, but it adds prestige, and it might change the minds that 30 years later remember what happened.
Yeah, we should perhaps talk about that sometime, how you'd engineer that. I think it'd be very difficult. I mean, you have MIT as an institution like any other institution, and these days, for instance, the president of MIT was talking about climate change accelerating. I asked her what was the basis for it. She said, authority. I showed her graphs that it didn't seem to be doing that, but that didn't have much impact. So I think in a world like that, to get an institution to assiduously avoid the bias, I think might be more difficult than you think.
Larry, hold on. Thanks for the call, Larry. 1-877. We'll leave you his name.
Sure.
Leave his number so you can talk again. I know. 1-877-469-4322. Dave, you're next with Howie Carr and Dr. Richard Lindzen, atmospheric scientist at MIT. Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, Howie. This was Dr. Lindzen. He was a good suggestion, huh?
Yes, he was. A very good suggestion. I think Dave was the one who said...
I've been following him for years. So his transcripts from the testifying in Congress, to the Boston Globe, and I squared with Mike.
Oh, sure.
He'll be missed on this fight with global warming, huh?
I think so. Although,
very rational guy, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you on that, but I knew Michael Crichton, and I realized he didn't realize when he wrote that book what flack he would get. He said he had never gotten as much flack as for writing that, and he actually wanted to duck out of it. It was
yes.
Yeah.
And you were that superhero there in Michael Crichton's
well,
anyway, right?
Andy Revkin in the New York Times said it was a cross between me and James Bond.
Thanks.
But thanks a lot for your contribution, and we'll definitely follow you. It's nice to hear someone that's got their feet planted firmly on the ground, and doesn't sound like someone who's is going to shoot holes with this. Obviously you have a great background.
Thanks for the call, Dave. 1-877-469-4322. Well, we've gotten the first of the emails that I knew would be coming in here.
Okay.
Dear sir, you're a moron.
Oh, good.
Now, this is addressed to you. Climate change is happening. The best scientific minds in the world have collectively agreed that the human race's, no apostrophe, the human race's use of fossil fuels is having a negative effect on the global climate. The record-breaking rain that we've been getting in Massachusetts should only help to reinforce this principle. Let me explain, since you seem to think that the current rainy cold weather is an indication that the scientific community is crazy, and then it goes on and on from there.
Well, gee, I mean, are you sure it's a serious email?
I think it is. I mean, he says the best scientific minds, and it's having and they agree that it's having a negative effect. Yeah, what is a negative effect?
Yeah, exactly.
Negative effect is spelled correctly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the notion that we were somehow, at some period, I suppose it must have been about 1968, had the ideal climate, and any deviation from that would be detrimental, is a sort of sad concept, given that climate is always changing. But I think this guy is a good example of what I was saying. I mean, it must give him a great deal of pleasure to call someone a moron when all his life he probably felt he was a moron. Now he can call somebody else a moron. So, this is part of what I call the psychic benefit of this issue for such people.
I thought this was addressed to you, but I guess it's more addressed to me. If you're too proud or stupid to see this, meaning global warming, so I'm stupid. He starts out, he begins by calling me a moron, and he closes by calling me stupid. You're too stupid to be on the radio.
Yeah, well, I think it could be either of us, but I've noticed this. I mean, I have something here from the austere magazine, Chemical Engineering News or something, and somebody writes to him saying, I wish you had more balanced treatment. And the guy responds, listen, when we talk about gravity, do I have to call someone from the Flat Earth Society? And that made him feel really good that he could say to someone they were flat earthers.
Right.
And a lot of people need that, to be able to call other people things.
Well, it's like calling yourself, it's like describing people who disagree as deniers. Because it makes it sound, they usually use that phrase as a Holocaust denier.
So
it makes you into a nut.
Yeah, it makes the other guy into a nut, and it makes you feel better about yourself. And this is the society, you have to feel good about yourself.
Let's see, Bruce from Merrimack says, I wanted to ask the professor, the last global warming 10,000 years ago ended the Ice Age. What caused that? It suggests that global warming isn't such a bad thing, and B, it wasn't caused by man.
Well, that's absolutely true. Climate has been changing without man for hundreds of millions of years. It has all sorts of wonderful features. I mean, you may not realize it. It's something I've been interested in 3 billion years ago. The sun's output was 30% less than it is today, and yet the evidence is the oceans didn't freeze over. Everything was not so different in terms of temperature from today. How come? You can't blame it on anything, and there were no SUVs at the time to keep it warm. But what can I say? I mean, you deal with change, and that's it.
Would you call global warming a hoax?
Given that the climate is always warming or cooling, at some level, it's not a hoax. The bad part is when something is always occurring to get people excited about it each way, that is a bit of a hoax.
Thanks for the call, Dave. 1-877-469-4322. I'm Howie Carr.
Saturdays at noon, the Doctor.
Hot town, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty.
Yeah, hot town. I wish. Dr. Lindzen here is wearing a vest, a thermal vest. It's July. Happy 4th of July. That's a nice vest you're wearing. 1-877-469-4322. I wish we had more time, Doctor. But tell us about it. I read the story last week. We passed this stupid cap and trade bill. India, the government of India immediately issues a statement saying, this is great for the U.S., but we're not going to do it. We don't give a bleep.
Yeah, well, I mean, India has been very sensible about it. I mean, so has China. They said, you do it. We're not going to. We have other priorities. The fascinating thing with India is they actually had a large study of climate. And in this study, they concluded that climate change was not going to be a problem for India. They didn't have to worry about it. Now, the guy who endorsed this report from India was a guy called Rajendra Pachauri. He's a railway economist who happens to be the head of the UN's climate thing, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. he's the one who's telling us the world is coming to an end and we better all become vegetarians. But for India, he thinks it's not going to be a problem.
Al Gore could not be reached for comment. I'm Howie Carr.